have love. I'm only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and have all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains but do not have love, I'm nothing. If I give all I possess to feed the poor and give over my body to hardship that I may boast but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It's not self-seeking. It's not easily angered. Keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. It never fails. You know, 3 weeks ago we started a series of sermons about Christian love. Not just love in general, as in I love my car, I love my dog, I love popcorn, I love sports. We're talking about Christian love, that kind of love that we get from understanding and receiving and living and walking in the love that the Father has for us. In fact, that love was so incredible that the apostle said, "What kind of love is this? Behold, what manner of love is this? That we could be called his children." He was just puzzled by that type of love. And when the love of God begins to permeate us, when we begin to stuff that on the inside and let it come to the outside, that's the love we're talking about today. Christian love, based on 1 Corinthians chapter 13. And we began to consider what Paul said was the most excellent way to live. Now, he's not saying that there is not an excellent way, or a good way, or even an okay way to live. What he said is, I want to show you the most excellent way. I don't want you to stand for status quo. I don't want you just to dwell in the average any longer. I want to show you the most excellent way to live. And that most excellent way is the way of love. Now, in the first few verses of chapter 13, Paul said that love was more important than spiritual gifts, knowledge, faith, even generosity. He said that love was more important than even a willingness to die for others or for Christ. But even if we had all that, but didn't have love, then we would be as empty and useless as beating a gong outside a pagan temple trying to wake up a false god that didn't exist in the first place. Now, as we went on to verse 4 last week, Paul tells us that love is patient. Love is long-suffering. That love suffers long. Love is slow to boil. Love counts down before it blasts off. Hello, guys. Then he tells us that love's kind. And that's what I want to consider this morning. You know, if you were describing our world today, would you describe our world today as a kind world? As we look at the things going on in the world, I think all of us would have to say no. This is a hard world, and it's getting unkinder as we go on. You know, I heard the story about a woman who was standing at a bus stop, and she had just cashed her tax refund check, and so she was carrying more money than usual. And she was a little bit nervous about having that much money in her purse. And she glanced around and she noticed a shabbily dressed man standing nearby. And as she watched, she saw a man walk up to him and hand him some money and whisper something in his ear. You know, she was so touched by that act of kindness that she decided to do the same thing. So in a burst of generosity, she reached into her purse and she pulled out a $10 bill and she handed it to the man, and she whispered in his ear, "Never despair. Never despair." The next day she came to the bus stop again, and there was that same man. But this time he walked up to her and he handed her $110. Puzzled, she asked, "What is this?" And the shabbily dressed man said, "You won, lady. You won. Never despair paid 10 to 1. Now, I can't promise that every act of kindness will pay 10 to 1. Because you know as well as I do that at times, kindness, the acts of kindness actually cost us something. and it requires sacrifice on our part. So with that in mind, what I'd like to do is look at a couple of the clearest examples of kindness in the Bible, and they're found in Luke chapter 8. If you flip over there pretty quick, or sort of quick, or just flip over there, or you can read them on the wall. Luke chapter 8, verse number 40. In this passage, we see Jesus showing kindness to two people who are entirely different. One is a man. Now remember, back then we were living in a patriarchic society where men were the bomb, women were possessions. You understand what I'm saying? It was a whole lot different than they are now. Oh, they're still not that way, Lenny said? Oh, okay. Connie, you can take care of that one. One is a man, one is a woman. One is an outcast, poor, unknown. We don't even know her name. The other is a rich, influential. He's the ruler of a synagogue. And yet, the thing that I see and the thing that just steps out at me most is the fact that we see Jesus showing kindness to both of them with the same respect and such a great kindness he showed. Now, by the time of this story, you've got to understand, Jesus had gained a great deal of fame. I mean, he was very, very popular. He was at the pinnacle of his popularity, and people respected him as a healer, as a teacher, and crowds were swarming around him wherever he went. But despite the pressures of popularity, despite the crowds constantly pushing in around him, despite all the demands on his time, Jesus, remember Jesus? The Son of God, Jesus? That Jesus. Oh, that one? That one. Remember our Christmas video from a few years ago? Actually, last year we did it again. Oh, that Jesus? I wondered what happened to him. Jesus, in the midst of his popularity, stopped everything he was doing to help them and to meet their needs. You know, a man named Cal Thomas wrote, "Love talked about is easily ignored, but love demonstrated is irresistible." Remember what Christ told his disciples the night before he was taken. "This commandment I give you, love one another. They will know you're my disciples because you love one another." Love talked about is easily ignored. Words are cheap. Have you noticed that? I mean, how many times have you had a friend or a person you were in a relationship with say, "I love you"? No, man, I love you. Just to turn around the next day over some minor offense, or maybe it was a big offense, over something, and just say, "I'm done with you. I don't love you anymore." You don't fall in love like you fall in a ditch. And you don't fall out of love like you fall out of a tree. It's different. Love is an action. Love is a decision. Love is something that we decide. Love talked about is easily ignored, but love demonstrated is irresistible. And you see, we're going to see as we go through these stories that Jesus not only talked about love, he not only talked about kindness, but he modeled it for us too. So let's look and see the ways that Jesus showed kindness to him, because I think these are the same way that we need to learn to show kindness to others today. First of all, Jesus expressed his kindness by listening to people, by paying attention to their needs. You know, before we go any further, I think that is one of the greatest needs of our day, is for someone to just listen. Just to listen. I mean, just to, and you know, it doesn't cost you any money to listen. It does, all it's going to cost you is time. Oh, I understand your time is of utmost importance to you. But what the world needs now is love, and that love can be showed by listening. I'll never forget when my mother died, and my baby brother and my mother got killed, and I mean, I was just totally devastated. I didn't feel like anybody understood. Everybody would come in, they say, "Oh, they're in a better place now." Yeah, but I'm not. I'm hurting. You know, I just lost two of the most important people in my life. And I was tired of all those pat answers. I was tired of hearing what everybody knows that they ought to say. And so I went in my bedroom and I just threw myself on the bed. I locked the door behind me and I told my young wife, I said, baby, I just don't want to talk to nobody. I don't want to deal with anybody. I don't care who they are. Send them away. About a couple hours later, I heard a knock on the door. And I said, what do you want? In a not very welcoming voice. And the little lady outside the door said, son, this is Miss Dills. I need to see you. I was like, you know, if it was somebody from down the street, I could have cussed them out and made them leave. But not her. She was one of my Sunday school teachers. So I opened the door and I said, I just really don't feel like talking right now. And she said, well, how about if I just sit with you? And she sat on the bed next to me and put her arms around me and just sit. And pretty soon the tears came. And pretty soon a few words came. And you know what? Miss Dills never said a single word to me. She just listened. She just listened. What a gift to give somebody is your ear. Just give them the time to actually listen to them. Jesus expressed kindness by listening to them. Listen to Luke chapter 8, verse 40. Now when Jesus returned, the crowd welcomed him, for they were all expecting him. Then a man named Jairus, a synagogue leader, came and fell at Jesus' feet, pleading with him to come to his house, because his only daughter, a girl of about 12, was dying. As Jesus was on his way, the crowds almost crushed him. Now, you know, when we read this story, we're not told where Jesus was going. Probably he was on his way to some open place where he could teach and preach to the crowds that were surging around him. And that was something very important to do, amen? They had been waiting for the long-awaited Messiah for generations. They had talked about him. They had kind of prepared and expected his coming. They needed to hear. But as important as that was, as soon as Jairus came and told him about his daughter, the very next words we read are, as Jesus was on his way. Evidently, Jesus immediately changed directions and started following Jairus because this little girl's situation was much more pressing than whatever else he had scheduled. Oh, by the way, how do you handle interruptions? Some people work best when they can concentrate on one thing and see it through to completion. They don't normally, at least guys don't normally do three things well at the same time. So if they're concentrating and something interrupts them, they consider that an intrusion. They don't normally handle interruptions well. Maybe you don't either. Remember the story of the Good Samaritan. The guy's robbed, beat nearly to death, thrown to the side of the road, bleeding, bruised, hurting. And the Levite, you know what a Levite is? That was one of the priests. He came by. He had, I can imagine him saying, God bless you, but if I stop now and take care of you, I'm going to be late to church. Everybody's expecting me. I'm a very important person, you see. How do you handle interruptions? Because if you take the time to listen to someone, if you take the time to care for someone the way God cares for you, it can really seem like an interruption if you don't have the right heart. If you're concentrating and someone interrupts you, so many times we consider it an intrusion. But you know, as you get older, or maybe it's just you as you become more mature in Christ, we learn that sometimes interruptions, those things that aggravate us, are sent by God. That they're opportunities to minister that you would have missed if you'd ignored that interruption. You see, if you just go on with your project and you don't allow yourself to be interrupted, if you don't allow God to change your plans, if you aren't flexible enough to change directions, and go in another way, you're going to miss great opportunities that God may place before you. Jesus paid attention to Jairus. He changed his plans. He changed his direction. But Jairus wasn't the only interruption, and Jesus was flexible and kind enough to pause and to meet another need as they were on their way to Jairus' house. So let me catch you up on this. Here's Jesus, and as he was going, the crowds pressing in. Everybody, I'm sure, wanted a piece of him. Everybody wanted to talk to him. Everybody wanted to dump their stuff on him. Everybody wanted him to fix them. And Jairus, a leader of the synagogue, very important man, by the way, came and said, Jesus, could you come with me? My baby is sick to the point of death. And so Jesus left the crowd. He left the spotlight. He left the accolades and the applause. And he turned to help this one man with his little 12-year-old daughter. He left the crowd and he started following her. Now, I would say that a 12-year-old little girl that was at a point of death is a very important thing. Amen? But watch what happened. As they were on their way to Jairus' house, look at verse 43. And a woman who was there, who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years, but no one could heal her. She came up behind him and she touched the edge of his cloak, and immediately her bleeding stopped. Who touched me? Jesus answered, or Jesus asked. When they all denied it, Peter said, Master, there's people everywhere. The people are crowding and pressing against you. But Jesus said, no, somebody touched me. I know the power's gone out from me. There were crowds of people surrounding him, and not everyone was in a hurry. Yet Jesus was able to differentiate between the touch of the crowd and the personal touch of the woman who needed help. Kindness. You know, our world is becoming more and more impersonal, isn't it? I mean, as I grew up, I worked for Donna's parents at their gas station. Actually, you can see the guys with "I will work for food." I was literally working for food, and Donna's parents had a gas station in the South Valley and a little mechanic shop. And when we heard that bell ring, you better have behind in motion. And you beat it out to that driveway. You opened the car door for them. You asked them how much gas they would like. You checked their tires. You washed their windows. You asked them if they needed anything else. Can I check your oil, sir? I mean, you served them. It was called a filling station. Now you just go to the gasoline station. You don't even have to talk to anybody anymore. Unless your stupid card won't work, amen? And then all you have to do is go in, grunt, hand them your card, and punch in the numbers. Just put your card in the slot, pump the gas. You can drive away without ever having to talk with anybody, without ever having to look at another human being. And it's the same way at the bank, isn't it? You drive up, you stick in the card, you punch in the numbers, it spits out the money. Now, I've never done this, but I understand you can make deposits and everything that way. You don't have to talk to anybody. How about the airlines? In any major city, you can make your call and you can hear a computerized voice. If you want information regarding departing flights, press number 1. For arriving flights, press 2. You press 1 and it says, if you know your flight number, press 1. You press 1 again and it says, enter your flight number, and then you punch that in, and then this computerized voice comes on and it tells you the correct gate you're supposed to be showing up at, and if your flight is on time or late or whatever. You never even have to talk to another living, breathing human being. And we won't even get into texting. Kids and adults don't even talk anymore. I tell I like texting. If Donna needs me to stop for milk or something like that, she can send me a text. But please let me warn you, if you call me and want to have a conversation on text, or if you text me and want to have a conversation, it doesn't work out for you very well. Because my answers usually start with yes and end with no. We don't talk anymore. I had Larissa and her cheerleader friends came out for to have a little barbecue and swimming party at our house sometime last week, and I was amazed. They were all sitting at the table, about 8 of them, 8 young girls, 14, 15, 16, 17 years old, and no talking going on. I think they were texting each other at the table. Don't get me started on it. We don't have to even talk anymore. We don't learn to communicate. We don't even talk anymore. Can you imagine what would happen if they did that with 911? You dial 911 and you hear, if your emergency is a murder, press 1. If it's a burglary, press 2. If the burglar's still in the house, press 3. If he has a gun, press 4, real quick. I don't know what we're coming to. It's become a very impersonal world. But Jesus took the time. He took the time to stop in the midst of a crowd and give a woman his personal attention as though she was the only one there. Then secondly, Jesus expressed kindness by being considerate of others. Verse 47. Then the woman, seeing that she could not go unnoticed, came trembling and fell at his feet. In the presence of all the people, she told why she had touched him and how she had been instantly healed. Then he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace." Now, we got to realize something here, that because of her disease, she was considered unclean. She was bleeding constantly for the last 12 years. And therefore, she was an outcast. They treated her like they treated someone with leprosy. Unclean, unclean. And because of that, she hadn't lived with her family for 12 years. She was unclean. Her self-esteem must have been as low as it possibly could be. So I think when she finally admits it was me, and she blurts out why she touched him, I think Jesus surprised her. First of all, by stopping and listening to her story of woe. You know, I think we have a very condensed version of the story she told. I mean, this is probably the first time in a long time that she really had someone's attention. So I imagine that she poured out her heart to him. I imagine that she said, "I've been this way for so long." One of the other Gospels tells us that she had spent everything she had on doctors and medicine and stuff, and nothing had worked. So not only was she sick, not only was she bleeding constantly, not only did the society and even the religious society consider her unclean, but she was broke. She was destitute. She probably lived on the streets like a beggar. And by listening, by looking at her, by paying attention to her, he was displaying real kindness. Are you a good listener? You know, that's something, that's a learned process, isn't it? Most of us probably aren't. We pass by each other and we say, "How are you?" We expect an automatic, "I'm fine." But have you ever been caught off guard by someone who really told you just how they felt? You know what I like to do when people say, "How are you?" every once in a while, I'll just say, "Not worth a darn." Off they go. You see, we're not really asking how you doing because we want to hear how you doing. It's just like saying hi, hi. It's just more sophisticated than just, "Yo, what up?" So "How are you?" "Oh man, my life sucks right now." Are you a good listener? How do you respond? "Oh man, I'm sorry to hear that, but you know, I got stuff to do." You know, one man recalls that he once said, "How are you?" to a lady, and she replied, "You don't want to know." He says, "She was right. I really didn't have time to listen to her just then. I was hurrying on to do something else." That's the kind of society we have become. Automated, instant. I think it's true. Most of us really don't take the time to listen. You know, Irma Bombeck, I love her story. She told about a time when she was so tired of listening. Now just let me let you in on a secret. we have a Jason. And Jason tells every story with billions of details. I mean, I walked from here to there, but he would tell you what color the grass was and how many frogs he passed and saw how many lizards he saw. And I mean, he just goes on and on. So this little bit of information that he gives you is a 30-minute chore. So as Irma told this story, I had to kind of chuckle. She said she had listened to her son telling in minute detail about a movie he had seen, punctuated by at least 1,000 you knows and okays. Then she had received several telephone calls filled with what she felt was mindless chatter that never seemed to end. So it was with genuine relief that she was able to tell the last caller that she just had to rush off to the airport. So she got into a taxi cab, took a sigh, and as the taxi cab driver took her to the airport, he told her all about his son who had won a scholarship to college and how he was making straight A's. Irma had to sit there and listen to it all. She said, but once I got to the airport and realized I was 30 minutes early, I breathed a sigh of relief and thought, I have 30 whole minutes where I don't have to listen to anyone. I can just sit here and read my book and not be bothered at all. Then she goes on and she said, but no sooner had I opened my book when an elderly female sat next to me and said, I bet it's cold in Chicago. I suppose, Irma said, without even looking up from her book. I haven't been to Chicago in 3 years, the woman said. My son lives there. That's nice, said Irma. Then the woman continued on. My husband's body is on the plane. We were married for 53 years. I don't drive, you see, and the funeral director was so nice, he drove me to the airport today. Irma recalls. Her voice droned on. Here was a woman who didn't want money or advice or counsel. All she wanted was someone to listen. And in desperation, she had turned to a total stranger with their story. Then Irma said, she continued to talk to me until they announced that we were boarding the plane. We walked onto the plane and I saw her sit down in another section. As I hung up my coat, I heard her say to the person next to her, I bet it's cold in Chicago. You see, there are so many people out there, guys. There are so many people. In fact, there are so many of us who just need somebody, anybody, sometime to listen, just to focus on us for just a minute, just to stop what they're doing, make eye contact, and listen. Listen to what we have to say. And Jesus did that day. Finally, Jesus expressed kindness through an understanding spirit. Notice what it says in verse number 49. And while Jesus was still speaking, someone came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue ruler. Your daughter is dead, he said. Don't bother the teacher anymore. Hearing this, Jesus said to Jairus, don't be afraid, just believe, and she'll be healed. When he arrived at the house of Jairus, he didn't let anyone go in with him except Peter, John, and James, and the child's father and mother. Meanwhile, all the people were wailing and mourning for her. Stop wailing, Jesus said. She's not dead, she's asleep. They laughed at him, knowing that she was dead. But he took her by the hand and said, my child, get up. Her spirit returned, and at once she stood up. Then Jesus told him, give her something to eat. Her parents were astonished, but he ordered them not to tell anyone what had happened. You know what part really astonishes me? That he ordered them not to tell anyone what had happened. I mean, let's just concentrate on those last few verses for just a minute. This miracle is exceptional. It's incredible. A 12-year-old girl that everyone knew she was dead, raised from her bed, now sitting there probably eating lunch. And we praise God for it. We know it's true. We praise God for it. But notice what Jesus told them. I mean, it blows me away. Don't tell anybody what has happened here today. I mean, what is that about? You know, some of the most disturbing words in the English language are 4 words that we love to speak but hate to hear. Those words are I told you so. It's fun to speak them, but we don't relish it if someone else is saying, I told you so. It's a difficult thing to listen to. Now, anybody who has parents have probably never heard those words, amen? But remember, the people outside the house, they had mocked Jesus. They had laughed at him before he went in to raise the girl back to life again. You know, if I were Jesus, you know what I would have done? Yeah. Same thing you would have done. I'd have taken that little girl by the hand, paraded her out on the front porch and said, "Ah! Sure, dead, huh? Take another bite of that peanut butter sandwich, sweetheart." I would have raised the girl back to life. I would have taken her by the hand and I would have walked up and down in front of all those mockers and I would have said to them, "I told you so. I told you so." That would have been a lot of fun, wouldn't it? But Jesus didn't do that. He was concerned with how they felt too. He didn't try to get even with them. He didn't try to get back at them. He didn't try to glorify himself. Instead, in kindness, in loving kindness, he tells the parents, don't tell anyone what has happened here. You know, sometimes it's not so much what we say as how we say it. One preacher said, I've never had to apologize for my position, but I have oftentimes had to apologize for my disposition. You ever had to apologize for your disposition? I remember many Christmases ago, we were preparing our annual trip to our Arbol de Vida Ministries, to the orphanage there in Mexico that we support. And we were doing very well financially, and we had had several big donors who said, I want you to do something nice for the orphanage. So we decided that we would, I was glad that Shaylin mentioned the story she did today, because in Mexico you have to have black shoes, black pants, white shirt, or black shoes, black skirt, white shirt, or you cannot attend public school. You just can't. And so we called Pastor Johnny and we said, look, we'd like to buy the kids shoes, socks, whatever they need. If you will make a list, we had about 30 kids, probably then, 28, 30 kids then. And we said, you give us a list of what they need and we will go shopping and we will bring them. We want to do that this year. So the main thing Pastor Johnny sent us was shoe sizes and colors. And, you know, this kid had dress shoes but didn't have tennis shoes, or this or that. And so we went to a store in Albuquerque, and of course everything's in metric sizes that Johnny gives me metric sizes. Well, I don't have a clue how that works. So we go to the store and we finally got somebody to help us, and it took us about an hour and 10 minutes. They didn't know anything about metric sizes, and we were trying to convert them, and we finally got all the shoes done. And then we got some wrapping paper, then we got some boxes, and then we got some cards, and we needed Scotch tape. And I was already aggravated. I had it up to here with that store. It took so long. And so I tell the lady, I said, where would I find the wrapping tape? And she goes, it's over there. You know. And I said, how far over there is it? And she said, it's over there. And I'm fuming by this time. It's like, seriously? I've got a basket full of shoes, probably $200-300 worth of shoes, and the lady can't even walk me over to show me where the tape is. We go over there, it's not there. And so we go back and we ask somebody else, where is the Scotch tape? Oh, it's right over there. By now I've had it. I said, forget the tape. We'll go somewhere else and get it. I'm done. I pushed. I didn't care who was in front of me. I pushed my basket up to the counter there. I started unloading shoes, and I was having fun, man. And this lady says, so, did you find everything you need? Thank you, Jesus, a chance to tell her, no, I did not find my Scotch tape. I said, one woman stuck her lips out at me. The other woman wouldn't even walk us over there. No, I didn't find what we needed. So she ran through. I'm sorry, sir, about your experience. Ran through all the shoes and said, would that be cash, check, or credit card? I said, I'm going to write a check. Oh, God. Yeah. Exactly, Brother Paul. Exactly. I wrote out the check, and she said, Westside Family Chapel. And I'm going, oh crap. She says, are you like the janitor or something there? My wife says, no, he's the pastor. I'm like, You see, sometimes it's not what you say, it's how you say it. We need to learn to show kindness. I love the story about the 6-foot Tim cowboy who walked into the counter at McDonald's, and he slammed his big fist down on the counter, and he said to the girl behind the counter, I want half a Big Mac. What? I want half a Big Mac, and I want it now, said the cowboy. Well, not sure what to do about it, she said, excuse me for a moment. So she headed over to her manager without realizing that the big cowboy was right behind her following her. So she got to the manager and she said, look, there's this big klutz over here who's dumber than dirt, and he's ordered half a Big Mac. And just about that moment she realized that she was standing in a shadow. And she realized he's standing right behind her. So quickly she added, and this gentleman wants the other half. You know, sometimes you may be put on the spot. And what you say is important, but how you say it can even be more important. In fact, the Apostle Paul commands us, speak the truth in love. You know, sometimes the truth is, well, I just told them the truth. Yeah, try that with your wife if she asks if that dress makes her behind look big. Speak the truth. See how you come with 2 black eyes next week. Sometimes it's not just about speaking the truth. The apostle said, speak the truth in love. You know how I interpret that? The gospel according to Larry? If it's not worth saying, shut up. If you can't say it in love, be quiet. If you can't say it in love, don't say it. You know, we are very good at just saying, well, it is the truth anyway. Well, I get that. But when you're crushing somebody's life, don't say it. Or figure out a kind way to say it. Or at least take the time to show that person how much you care about them before you wreck their whole world. Hello? Or at least be willing to sit there and have a conversation when you're finished. But no, we just blurt things out and we don't really care who's hurt. The fact that Jesus didn't want to embarrass those who had been mocking him or get even with them speaks volumes to me. I mean, I was convicted about this. And teaches us how we're to respond to each other too. There were some construction workers, they were working on a high-rise across the street from a hospital. And as they were working on the 3rd floor, true story, they noticed a little girl standing on the 3rd floor window of the hospital watching them. One day they looked across and the little girl held up a poster that said, my name is Lisa. What's your names? So the next day the construction workers came back with some poster board and some magic markers and they all wrote down their names. My name is Bob. My name is Bill. My name is Harry. How old are you? The next day the little girl held up a sign that said, I'm 7 years old. How old are you? Well, this went on for several days. But one day they noticed that Lisa wasn't in her usual place at the window. So at break time, one of the workers called the hospital and asked the 3rd floor nurse. He asked if she knew anything about the little girl named Lisa. The nurse said that Lisa had taken a turn for the worse and was now in intensive care. So all those construction workers, them big old bad, strong construction workers, pooled their money and bought some flowers and a card and wrote a note on it and sent it to Lisa in intensive care. Several days passed, and then they saw another sign that appeared in the window. Lisa had passed away. Thank you for caring. You see, love is kind. Love is kind. We need to learn to be kind to each other, even as God has been kind to us through Jesus Christ. Even as He has showed us His loving kindness in so many different ways. I want to give you the opportunity to respond this morning. And we do that by offering his invitation. This isn't Pastor Larry's invitation. This is Christ's invitation to you. We invite you to come forward, acknowledge his love, his great love for you. The kind of love that says, while you were still my enemy, I died for you. First of all, if you're here this morning and you never received Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, maybe you have questions. I get that. Let me just share with you, I do not have all the answers. But if there's one thing I can share with you, is the difference Christ has made in my heart, in my life, in the life of my family. Maybe today is the day that you need to let go and say, I've never understood that kind of love. Pastor, you've been talking about this for 3 weeks. I don't get it, but I want it. I don't understand it, but that's what I need. I not only need to accept the love of Christ, but I want to live that love so other people might too. If you're here today, you need to make a decision. Church, would you stand?